darlings, in this video I'll show you how to stay stitch fabric on a sewing machine. A simple but essential technique that helps prevent curved and bias cut edges from stretching out of shape while you sew. Stay stitching is a row of straight machine stitches sewn inside the seam allowance, usually about 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the stitching line. Because it's sewn within the seam allowance, the stitches won't be visible on the finished garment. Stay stitching stabilises curved and bias cut edges, helping to prevent them from stretching or distorting while you handle and sew the fabric. This is especially important because curved and bias cut edges can stretch very easily. Even simply picking up, moving, pinning or pressing the fabric can cause these edges to lose their shape. For this reason, stay stitching should be sewn as soon as possible after cutting out your fabric, before the edges have a chance to become distorted. Stay stitching is commonly used on curved or bias cut edges such as necklines, armholes, waistlines and collars. To see why stay stitching is so important, let's compare two identical fabric pieces. This piece has been stay stitched immediately after cutting and this piece hasn't. After handling the fabric, you can see that the unstay stitched edge has stretched and lost its shape, while the stay stitched edge has remained stable. Before we start sewing, make sure your sewing machine is set up correctly. Every sewing machine is a little different, so always refer to your sewing machine manual for the best guidance. That means using the correct needle and thread for your fabric, attaching a standard zigzag presser foot, threading the machine properly, and doing a quick test stitch on scrap fabric first. For stay stitching, use a regular stitch length. For example, I'm using a lightweight calico fabric, a size 70 or 10 universal needle, polyester sew-all thread, and a standard zigzag presser foot. My machine is set to a centre aligned straight stitch, a stitch length of 2.5, and a thread tension of 4. If you're unsure how to do this, I've linked related videos in the description below with more detail to help you. Before you begin sewing, determine which direction you'll be stay stitching. Some sewing patterns include stay stitching instructions and may specify the direction you should sew. If they do, follow the pattern instructions. The direction of stitching is important because it helps prevent the fabric from stretching or becoming distorted. It's also important to keep the stitching direction consistent on matching garment pieces so they stretch evenly and remain symmetrical. For this neckline, I'll start at one shoulder and sew towards the centre front. Then I'll remove the fabric, return to the opposite shoulder and sew towards the centre front again. This means both sides of the neckline are sewn in the same direction, helping the neckline maintain its shape. Raise the presser foot and place the fabric underneath. Align the raw edge with the appropriate seam guideline on the throw plate. For example, my seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch, which is one of the most common seam allowances in garment sewing. I need to sew inside this, so I'll align the edge to the 4/8 of an inch line. I like to use a magnetic seam guide to make the guideline more visible and help keep the seam allowance consistent. However, only use magnetic seam guides on manual sewing machines, as the magnet can interfere with digital or computerized machines. For digital machines, use a strip of masking tape instead to create a more visible seam guide. Turn the handle towards you to lower the needle into the fabric. Smooth both threads towards the back of the machine, then lower the presser foot. Lightly hold the threads and sew a few stitches forwards. Unlike a seam, stay stitching does not usually need to be backstitched because it is only a temporary stabilising stitch and will later be secured within the garment construction. Release the threads and continue sewing slowly along the edge. Take care not to pull or stretch the fabric as you sew, as this can distort the shape of the edge. As you sew, you may need to stop occasionally with the needle down, raise the presser foot and pivot the fabric slightly to help the curve feed smoothly. The tighter the curve, the more frequently you may need to pivot. Continue sewing until you reach the centre front. Raise the presser foot and gently remove the fabric. Trim the threads using the thread cutter or a pair of embroidery scissors. Reposition the opposite shoulder under the presser foot and repeat the process, sewing towards the centre front once again. And that's how to stay stitch fabric on a sewing machine. For more sewing Bexpertise, I've linked helpful videos in the description below. Please don't forget to subscribe, and as always, happy sewing!